Welcome to this special edition of Twinsburg Schools Today. I'm Dennis Sahetka with Community Focus. Well, we're just over a month into what has become the craziest school season ever. And we thought that was a perfect time to talk to Superintendent Kathi Powers about this reopening plan and where we stand and what the future might hold. Kathi, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for inviting me, Dennis. It's always a pleasure to be here.
So I guess we should start with the reopening plan, revisiting that. I know you have a lot of information to get out, and I know we've had a lot of questions, and you've gotten a lot of questions from parents and community members, so there's a lot to cover, and we only have 29 minutes. So
Right.
Let's start with the reopening plan.
Sure. Well, you know, when we were asked to pivot out last March, it was a flurry of activity, and we knew that we were going to be there for the spring 3 months of the year. But we also knew that we had to reopen, and we had to reopen safely. And so working through a number of surveys with our parents, understanding our facilities and what we can accommodate, and paying attention to all the health orders, we created the district reopening plan. First and foremost, the focus has to be on the safety and welfare of all of our students and all of our staff members. That has to be the priority. It continues to be that way. But the other thing that rang pretty significantly was the fact that many of our parents, especially the parents of our youngest children, rely on us so that they can get to work, right? It's an economic situation. When we were shut down as a state, many of our parents were home, couldn't work, lost positions. And so our families depend on a school district to make sure that their children are not only in a great academic setting, but are in a safe place too. And then we took a look at our capacity issues, and we started to develop the plan after weeks of, I think, measuring classrooms and learning spaces. And what we've come to know is that just because the number of classrooms are the same dimension, it doesn't mean you can fit the same number of children in a room. And so I really appreciate Chad Welker, my business manager, and Eric Brunton, who works behind the scenes with some logistical information for the district, all the administrators, and of course our Board of Education, who created our district reopening plan. And we launched it. We had our soft reopening week in August, where we brought back just a small portion of students at a time. And that was important because, as you know, the whole district has been realigned. We now have students in grades 2 through 6 on the campus of Twinsburg High School. We have students in grades 10 through 12 at R.B. Chamberlain Middle School. Our students in grades 7 through 9 are across the street at Dodge. First grade is at Bissell, and preschool and kindergarten remained at Wilcox. So it's as if we had a snow globe and we shook it up, and all the pieces settled into what we really believe has been a really good start of a school year.
Talk about the need to reshuffle and really the flexibility that allowed you. You're one of very few schools in this area that was able to keep social distancing, and it was because of the reshuffling. So I know a lot of people complain, what are we doing? Why are we moving kids? But it's really been a really good thing during this pandemic.
Right, it goes down to that 6-foot social distance rule. We knew that was the best thing to do to be able to ensure that if we have a COVID situation, that students wouldn't have to quarantine because of the close nature of how classrooms are typically designed. We took a look at the shields. We actually had one of our local partners, Mr. Todd Courtney from Crown Composites, came to the district in July with his engineer colleague, and they created a shelter, or not a shelter, a sneeze guard for us. Sent the prototypes down to Summit County Public Health, and the answer was, well, that will make people feel better, but there isn't any health impact to those sneeze guards. So why would you spend $500,000 on sneeze guards if that's not going to help keep kids safe and in classrooms, as well as my staff? So with that information, we knew that the only way to ensure safety and to make sure that we had that 6 feet social distance between the children and their teachers and each other was to take a look at realigning where grade bands happen to be for the school year. It was a huge undertaking. It took several weeks in the summertime for teachers to come in and to pack and to take home personal belongings, because when you think about a classroom set up for the pandemic, for COVID, because of the nightly sanitization, there can't be a lot of extra teaching things around. Can't be a lot of books around it. It's almost a more sterile environment. And so teachers came in, packed up things. We've put a lot of things into storage. And we had student workers come and help us. They moved boxes of teaching materials, textbooks and the like, and we reshuffled the district. It was a difficult time because teachers, I'm a teacher by trade. I like my space. I like my stuff. I like to be able to go in my cupboard and pull out, the materials for a unit that I'm doing on whatever topic it happens to be. But our teachers had to work together and had to really understand that in order to make this work, things have to look different in the classrooms and the way that we teach school has to be different.
Well, it should be noted that because you reshuffled and sent kids to different schools, were able to keep this 6 feet social distancing, it has really helped you during this quarantine time. We're seeing schools all over having 20, 30 kids because of contact tracing having to be quarantined, and you have not had to do that as much because of this reshuffling. So before we get into that, let's talk about probably the most common question. What do you do if you get a positive test, either with a student or a staff? How do you contact trace, or do you contact trace? And what happens with quarantining?
Sure. So the only people who can officially contact trace or officially quarantine are health officials. And so that's a really important a bit of information for folks to know. What we do as a school district with regard to a positive case, so say we got word, case in point this morning, I received a notification that a student who is a 7th grade virtual academy student, so this particular child doesn't come to our campus. They attend our virtual academy. She tested positive, results came in this morning. So my role in helping with the contact tracing is to go into our DASL system and determine if we have sibling groups, and then to submit that information through the Summit County Public Health Department's portal on their website. So I submit the name of the positive individual, and then I submit the names of anyone who I determine to be in close contact. Now, if it's a case where it's a student who goes to our on-campus option, then I'm talking to the principal and I'm asking for classroom rosters. I'm asking the principals, if it's during the work week, I ask them to have a personal conversation with any teacher who has that child in their class, any lunchroom aide, custodial staff member. I contact our transportation department. Does this child ride the bus? Where does the child sit on the bus? And who sits close by the child on the bus? And then if it's on the weekend, I'm calling the staff and saying, hey, and we have a situation. Tell me the circumstance of this child in your classroom. What has been so wonderful is in all of the cases of students reported in our classrooms as being positive, and I just want to say as of today, we've only had 20 cases, and that's 18 students and 2 staff members tested positive, which is remarkable given the spread in the nation. We haven't had a quarantine situation out of a classroom, and that's because of our 6-foot social distance requirement. Now, the students that have been quarantined have been those who are siblings of a positive person. There's a family member. And oftentimes I don't know a lot about the quarantine situations because things happen in the community from which families can be contacted and told by Summit County Public Health that the child should be quarantined. They don't always follow back up with me, so I don't always know the circumstances.
Is that through HIPAA? I mean, do they not have to tell you?
Correct.
Okay.
Right, and because there's a division here, and really I'm only really dealing with what happens within the walls of our school district. Sure. Anything that happens outside the school district really isn't my business, for one, and honestly we have enough to manage within Twinsburg schools. That's perfectly fine that that's where my focus is.
And virtual students still can participate in extracurricular, so you have to find out if they're extracurricular or in anything like that.
Right. That is the case. And in fact, we have had situations where, I'm calling the athletic director. Does this student participate on a team? Are they a member of our show choir? All those things are considered. That's the part of the tracing that I do. And then really then I submit those individuals' names and their parents' contact information into the portal for the Summit County Public Health officials. They take it from there, and they determine who needs to be quarantined for how long, and they also work with the individual who has tested positive to have an interview with them to try to determine if there's any out-of-school contacts that need to have direct contact by a contact tracer from the county to figure out maybe subsequent quarantine situations.
Tell me what COVID-19 dashboard is. So you have, for community members who want to know some of this information, and also how does Smart Start play into this? Is that what you're calling this sort of plan?
Right. So when we released the district reopening plan, it just talked about the two options parents had: on campus or the virtual academy, and really we're a service organization, so we try to make it work for our families in whatever environment that they desire. So that was the first document that we released. Then we started to have questions, lots of questions. What happens if my child gets sent home from school but they test negative? What do I have to do? And so working again with Summit County Public Health, Donna Skota, who's the commissioner, and Tanya Burford, who's the environmental director, and their staff, they've read that document multiple times, offered feedback, and once it was to a place that we felt pretty good about it, it was launched and it is on our website. So if you have a certain circumstance and you want to know what chances are the district's response will be or what you should do, we invite our parents to take a look at the Smart Restart document. Our district nurse, Jen Pinkney, is hugely involved in anything to do with COVID. She tracks cases for me, and she always helps redirect parents who have questions about what to do with their children or their family. With regard to the dashboard, that was actually in response to an order that we received a couple weeks back about making sure that we're as transparent as we possibly can be regarding COVID. People are very worried. They're anxious. They need to know information. They need to know factual information and timely information. And so in every single case, once I submit information to the portal for Summit County Public Health, I do a couple of letters. The first will go to the classmates of the child who tested positive, or if it's a staff member, if they are related to a class of children. The second letter would go to the entire school community. And that's actually followed up. I also sent it to the local newspaper. I sent it to the city government, the township government, and Reminderville's village government. So everybody understands what circumstances we're dealing with in the school district. And then the dashboard is the one place you can look if you're interested. How many COVID student cases have we had? How many COVID positive staff cases? It's all out there. It's on our website, as well as all of my letters. We just have a running file. So if you have curiosity about what's been going on at the Twinsburg City School District, look at our website. It's all there because we want to be transparent.
And that's right there on the homepage. I think there's a dashboard icon right there.
Yep.
Yeah. You mentioned the communication, the constant communication with Summit Health. Talk about that communication, and as we move into winter sports and choir season, holiday concerts, all of those things, I'm sure you've gotten a lot of questions with, how are you going to proceed with that? Are you going to allow people in the audience? And how is Summit Health involved in making those decisions?
They have been tremendous partners. I can't speak highly enough about Donna Skota and Tanya Burford and the entire staff. Way back when we started to think about commencement, remember, for the class of 20, Donna and her staff were hugely involved in what can we do for the seniors, what would be safe, what shouldn't we do, and they provided guidance. Since way back in April, every Wednesday afternoon there's a conference call with the Summit County Superintendent Group and with the health officials, and they provide a weekly update to us about the statistics behind the pandemic. They provide great question and answer periods for us. They provide counsel to us. Lots of, out of the inbox questions that we just ask, and they provide guidance in all things. So Donna and Tanya have been just tremendous partners with school districts, and, it's not always easy to hear the information they have to share. We're in a situation where, the numbers right now are growing, and they're very concerned, but their advice and their good counsel has been spot on way back since, the spring of last school year, so I appreciate them. With regard to activities in our school districts, every single activity that we're doing with our kids in groups, whether it's football, whether it's soccer, volleyball, cross country, and now with the upcoming winter sports season, with upcoming choir season, we have marching bands, we have orchestra students. In every case, we are developing a plan. There are two orders in particular. One order talks about what happens in sports and athletic activities, and that order was launched back in the spring when we were trying to figure out how do you keep kids safe and still really understand that participating in extracurriculars and athletics is really such a critical part of growing up. And so we use that order to create our plans for all things athletics. Second to that, now we have the order for entertainment venues, and so last weekend I drafted out a plan to make sure that when our families want to come and hear our marching band do their end of the season concert first week in November, or the orchestra will soon have their holiday concert. We have fantastic chorus kids, our show choirs, they want to perform. How do we do that? How do we have students practice and actually have a great end result of performing? And we appreciate live streaming, and thank you for all the live streaming that you do here for us. But we also know that moms and dads want to see their kids perform in person. And so using the guidance of the entertainment venue order, we created a plan now about how do we get guests in and out of the school, how do they sit in the auditorium or in the bleachers in the gymnasium, how do you stagger their entry and exit, how do you keep people safe, how do you sanitize. All of those various parts and pieces are included in the plans, and those plans are then, once created in the district, sent to Summit County. They offer great advice how to tweak them here or add this or take that away, and then they approve it. And I like having the umbrella of the county because I am not a scientist, I am not a doctor, I'm not a medical person of any sense of the word. I'm an educator, and so I need their assistance to make sure that we are doing the right thing by this pandemic to keep everybody safe.
So you have just recently submitted a plan, and it has been approved for the entertainment.
Correct.
So what's that going to look like?
So, there's capacity issues with regard to how many people can sit safely 6 feet socially distanced in our auditorium as well as in the gymnasium. We had a little practice with the capacity issues with volleyball. So we had a little practice with how do you use the bleachers, how do you seat folks. Auditorium has its own nuances about how do you get folks seated in groups of 2 or groups of 4. And with our large groups, for example, the marching band, we don't have the capacity to even be able to use the auditorium for their performances. There are well over 100 students in the marching band. And the capacity that we can use has to be 15% of the capacity, not to exceed 300 guests in the auditorium. Well, give each of those students 2 or 3 tickets, in some cases 4, you don't have enough room. And so we are probably going to have to host the marching band and probably the concert band's concerts in the gymnasium. Not the best situation, not the acoustics of the auditorium, but the point is kids are still going to be able to perform and their parents are going to be able to enjoy the concerts.
Well, I must say, we live streamed, the whole staff here got together and did the fall orchestra concert. And first of all, I also went that morning, 7 a.m. to watch their rehearsal. And I was so impressed with the mask wearing, just how courteous everyone was. There doesn't seem to be any issues, at least what I saw in the high school, with mask wearing. Has that been an issue across the district?
Not at all. I am so proud of our students and our staff members. At the beginning of the year was gentle reminders, good modeling, good review of practices. But our kids and our staff have done a rock star job of doing the right thing. They understand that if they want to enjoy all these activities, that they have to be safe and they have to keep not only themselves safe. Wearing masks is about keeping everybody around you safe. And so been very proud of the students and the staff. They're doing everything they need to do. In our buildings, if we were there today, you would see that there are 6 feet social markers, little tiger heads. In our hallways, long 6 feet social distance reminders in each doorway of each classroom. And it's been, reminding students initially. Now if you're over at the buildings, you see kids spacing themselves properly. and keeping each other safe. And, anybody who forgets, the gentle reminders are not only made by the teaching staff and the classified staff, the students remind each other, which is a great thing.
Well, and we were appreciative, at least for that concert, that there was no one in the auditorium.
Mm-hmm.
It was great for us and for our staff, so we felt safe and comfortable, and we had access to the stage that we don't normally get. So that was nice, and it made for a really nice production. And I know I saw a lot of great comments from Facebook, over 1,000 views as far as Korea and Canada.
No kidding.
Yeah, so
Wow.
we got a lot of great feedback from that. And we're happy. We want to do as many as we can, but we're going to also try to keep our people safe too. So think of us when you're making that plan, and we will live stream as many as we can for those parents who don't want to come in and don't feel safe coming in. We'll try to give you a live virtual look at your child's performance.
Well, we appreciate that, Dennis, because it is all about partnerships. Nobody has been here before in this space and time, and we're all trying to figure it out. And what doesn't work today, we're going to think through it and figure something out for tomorrow. And so your partnership with the district is so valuable. We appreciate all that you do to make us look good, and it's a wonderful thing.
Well, it's easy to make you guys look good, and that orchestra was phenomenal. By the way, we'll be running that on In Focus this week, every day at noon and 7.
Great.
So you can watch that. Also on mycommunityfocus.app.
Thank
so
you.
You can also see this show at mycommunityfocus.app, as well as all of our shows. So please tune in. I have to say, the other thing that struck me while we were doing the live stream and setting up. So I was there at 7 o'clock. Watch this. As soon as those kids left, there were 2 custodians with a device to clean. They were wiping down everything. Before I could even start tearing down my camera, they were doing that. And then we came back with the whole crew to set up at 2:15. And that entire stage floor was mopped. All the chairs were wiped down. They're spraying things. I think I saw 3 custodians for a full hour cleaning that stage for that concert. So I was impressed with that. I don't know what the requirements are, but talk about your policy in sanitization during all this.
It has a huge part in making sure that we can stay open and keep everybody safe. We have a great custodial janitorial staff. They have taken this challenge on and are doing a wonderful job. What you saw were the misters. So anytime we have a class change, whether it's moving in and out of the auditorium or at the middle school, not so much the middle school because the students stay where they are for class, but the high school students will switch classes. In between class switch, between say block 1 and 2, the janitors over at the RBC campus where our high school students are currently in school will come in and they sanitize with a quat-based disinfectant, making sure that things are clean and ready for the next group of children. It's an ongoing thing. The custodial staff has a routine of every high-touch part of the building. Their main priority during the school day is keeping things sanitized. And I really believe it's working. And I'll give you an example. Over at the 7th grade building, we've had, I think, 3 students who tested positive for COVID. But what has been interesting is there hasn't been spread between that we can connect these 3 kids together, which tells you that the sanitization is working. The 6-foot social distancing piece is working, and the sanitization is playing large and making sure that the building is as clean and healthy as it can be for everybody.
So how do you ensure, and everything that I saw, it looks like all the kids and staff are following the protocols, but how do you enforce that, and how are you making sure that at every school everybody's doing what they're supposed to do?
The administrative team and the teaching staff, classified staff, really have done a great job of supporting each other and of supporting students and just modeling appropriate behavior, reminding students of what is expected, and the communication with our families too, asking them to remind their children, the best way to behave, how to keep socially distanced. Even if you drive past Twinsburg High School, and it's the strangest thing when you see these little students in grades 2nd through 6th outside having recess on the front lawn of Twinsburg High School, which is usually a high school campus. Even when they play outside, the students are playing in what we call community cohorts. So if you're in, say, Mrs. Conrad's classroom, when you're outside for recess, you're playing within your cohort from Mrs. Conrad's classroom, and you're keeping each other safe because you're reminding each other about wearing your masks and also about keeping 6 foot socially distanced. So the kids have really become quite expert at how to keep each other safe and being good friends to one another with those gentle reminders, and it's really working.
Well, we're getting short on time, and I want to make sure to address third grade state reading tests are coming up, and I know parents might be concerned about accommodations that are being made for those third graders who are virtual.
Right. So thankfully, we have wonderfully supportive governments, local governments in our school community. Mayor Sam from Reminderville, Mayor Yates from Twinsburg, and of course the 3 trustees from the township. And they have supported us throughout this whole pandemic. So with regard to the third grade reading test, we also have 5th grade students who have to come in to be tested for gifted programming in the next couple of weeks. We reached out to the city of Twinsburg, requested that we could use the community center, and so the students are coming in to take their state assessments as classroom groups. So you know, if it's a certain teacher's classroom, they invite their students in. They come for the day of or morning of the testing, and then they're back home thereafter. So we want to thank Mayor Yates and Derek Schroeder from the city of Twinsburg. They've accommodated our need, and the testing situation has gone off without a hitch, keeping kids safe, keeping them distant from anybody else, but also making sure that we're meeting the requirements of the state assessments. We're hopeful once the legislators are back to work following the election, we may have some relief on testing for the spring group of assessments that students will take. It's very difficult to manage all of the state assessments, and we're very fortunate in our community. We have great things happening in our schools and great support from our community so that every student has a Chromebook and internet access, but it's not the same playing field in all schools in the state. So I worry about the state assessments in the spring. I hope that we can have some relief in that respect.
Well, everybody here and just takes their hat off to you, the staff, and the students. I mean, right now, you all are like the first responders. I mean, you're dealing with a huge undertaking. You're now running 2 districts, a virtual and an on-campus. So we appreciate everything that you're doing for the students. A lot of times good can come from bad. So what have you learned from this pandemic, and any positive things do you think coming out of this?
First and foremost, it's the sense of teamwork. Whether it's my staff and the students working together or the community supporting us, the sense of teamwork has never been more seen everywhere you go. This is a huge team effort to keep everyone safe, not just the kids, not just the staff, but the community as a whole. And I so appreciate that. The other thing is I notice people are much more kind to each other. The need to be flexible, the need to understand that we are not operating like we've ever done before. And so when people are kind and they say, we understand, cut your break here, we know things are different, it's phenomenal. And then lastly, we talked about this during our blended learning show. We're able to actually harness the power of technology through our blended learning initiative and really being able to do some pretty cool things with students using technology, using the Google Meet, using the Google Classroom, and doing it maybe quicker than we would if we were back in the old days when everybody was on campus.
Right.
So it's an interesting time.
Well, I wish we had more time. We might have to come back and do this again. We're out of time. Thank you for sharing this information with us. Remember, folks, you can see this program online, on demand, mycommunityfocus.app, and on Spectrum Cable, channel 1021. So please enjoy and watch, and hats off to you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time today.